Chapter 55 of April's Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. April's Lady by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. Chapter 55. Great discontents there are, and many murmurs. There is a kind of mournful eloquence in thy dumb grief. Lady Baltimore, too, had been very pleased by the news when Felix told her next morning of his good luck. In all her own great unhappiness, she had still a kindly word and thought for her cousin and his fiancée. "One of the nicest girls," she says, pressing his hands warmly. "I often think, indeed, the nicest girl I know. You are fortunate, Felix, but," very kindly, "she is fortunate too." "Oh no, the luck is all on my side," says he. "It will be a blow to Norman," she says presently. "I think not," with an irrepressible touch of scorn. "There is Miss Maliphant." "You mean that he can decline upon her? Of course I quite understand that you do not like him," says she with a quick sigh. "But believe me, any heart he has was really given to Joyce. Well, he must devote himself to ambition now. Miss Maliphant can help him to that." "No, no, that is all knocked on the head. It appears, this is in strictest confidence, Felix, but it appears he asked her to marry him last evening, and she refused." Felix turns to her as if to give utterance to some vehement words, and then checks himself. After all, why add to her unhappiness? Why tell her of that cur's baseness? Her own brother, too. It would be but another grief to her. To think he should have gone from her to Miss Maliphant. What a pitiful creature, beneath contempt! Well, if his pride survives those two downfalls, both in one day, it must be made of leather. It does Felix good to think of how Miss Maliphant must have worded her refusal. She is not famous for grace of speech. He must have had a real bad time of it. Of course, Joyce had told him of her interview with the sturdy heiress. "Ah, she refused?" says he, hardly knowing what to say. "Yes, and not very graciously, I'm afraid. He gave me the mere fact of the refusal, no more, and only that because he had to give a reason for his abrupt departure. You know he is going this evening." "No, I did not know it. Of course, under the circumstances." "Yes, he could hardly stay here. Margaret came to me and said she would go, but I would not allow that. After all, every woman has a right to refuse or accept as she will." "True." His heart gives an exultant leap as he remembers how his love had willed. "I only wish she had not hurt him in the refusal. But I could see he was wounded. He was not in his usual careless spirits. He struck me as being a little, well, you know, a little—" she hesitates. "Out of temper?" suggests Felix involuntarily. "Well, yes. Disappointment takes that course with some people. After all, it might have been worse if she had set his heart on Joyce and been refused." "Much worse," says Felix, his eyes on the ground. "She would have been a severe loss." Severe indeed. By this time Felix is beginning to feel like an advanced hypocrite. "As for Margaret Maliphant, I'm afraid he was more concerned about the loss of her bonds and scrips than of herself. It is a terrible world, Felix, when all is told," says she, suddenly crossing her beautiful long white hands over her knees and leaning toward him. There is a touch of misery so sharp in her voice that he starts as he looks at her. It is a momentary fit of emotion, however, and passes before he dare comment on it. With a heart nigh to breaking, she still retains her composure and talks calmly to Felix, and lets him talk to her, as though the fact that she is soon to lose forever the man who once had gained her heart, that fatal once that means for always, in spite of everything that has come and gone, is as little or nothing to her. Seeing her sitting there, strangely pale indeed, but so collected, it would be impossible to guess at the tempest of passion and grief and terror that reigns within her breast. Women are not so strong to bear as men, and therefore in the world's storms suffer most. "It is a lovely world," says he smiling, thinking of Joyce, and then, remembering her sad lot, his smile fades. "One might make, perhaps, a bad world better," he says, stammering. "Ah, teach me how," says she, with a melancholy glance. "There is such a thing as forgiveness." "Forgive him!" blurts he out in a frightened sort of way. He is horrified at himself, at his own temerity, a second later, and rises to his feet as if to meet the indignation he has certainly courted. But to his surprise, no such indignation betrays itself. "Is that your advice?" says she, still with the thin white hands clasped over the knee, and the earnest gaze on him. "Well, well, well." Her eyes droop. She seems to be thinking, and he, gazing at her, refrains from speech with his heart sad with pity. Presently she lifts her head and looks at him. "There, go back to your love," she says, with a glance that thrills him. "Tell her from me that if you had the whole world to choose from, I shall still select her as your wife. I like her. I love her. There, go." She seems to grow all at once very tired. Are those tears that are rising in her eyes? She holds out to him her hand. Felix, taking it, holds it closely for a moment, and presently, as if moved to do it, he stoops and presses a warm kiss upon it. She is so unhappy, and so kind, and so true. God deliver her out of her sorrow. End of chapter 55. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 56 of April's Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. April's Lady by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. Chapter 56. I would that I were low laid in my grave. She is still sitting silent, lost in thought, after Felix's departure, when the door opens once again to admit her husband. His hands are full of papers. "Are you at liberty?" says he. "Have you a moment? These," pointing to the papers, "want signing. Can you give your attention to them now?" "What are they?" asks she, rising. "Mere law papers." "You need not look so terrified." His tone is bitter. "There are certain matters that must be arranged before my departure, matters that concern your welfare and the boys'." Here, laying the papers upon the davenport and spreading them out, "you sign your name here." "But," recoiling, "what is it? What does it all mean?" "It is not your death warrant, I assure you," says he, with a sneer, Come, sign." Seeing her still hesitate, he turns upon her savagely. Who shall say what hidden storms of grief and regret lie within that burst of anger? "Do you want your son to live and die a poor man?" says he. "Come, there is yourself to be considered, too. Once I am out of your way, you will be able to begin life again with a light heart, and this," tapping the paper heavily, "will enable you to do it. I make over to you and the boy everything, at least as nearly everything as will enable me to live." "It should be the other way," says she. "Take everything, and leave us enough on which to live." "Why?" says he, facing round, something in her voice that resembles remorse striking him. "We shall have each other," says she faintly. "Having happily got rid of such useless lumber as the father and husband, well, you will be the happier so," rejoins he with a laugh that hurts him more than it hurts her, though she cannot know that. "Two is company, you know, according to the good old proverb, three trumpery. You and he will get on very well without me, no doubt." "It is your arrangement," says she. "If that thought is a salve to your conscience, pray think so," rejoins he. "It isn't worth an argument. We are only wasting time." He hands her the pen. She takes it mechanically, but makes no use of it. "You will at least tell me where you are going?" says she. "Certainly I should, if only I knew myself. To America first, but that is a big direction, and I am afraid the tenderest love letter would not reach me through it. When your friends ask you, say I have gone to the North Pole. It is as likely a destination as another." "But not to know!" says she, lifting her dark eyes to his, dark eyes that seem to glow like fire in her white face. "That would be terrible. It is unfair. You should think. Her voice grows husky and uncertain. She stops abruptly. "Don't be uneasy about that," says he. "I shall take care that my death, when it occurs, is made known to you as soon as possible. Your mind shall be relieved on that score with as little delay as I can manage. The welcome news shall be conveyed to you by a swift messenger." She flings the pen upon the writing table and turns away. "Insult me to the last if you will," says she, "but consider your son. He loves you. He will desire news of you from time to time. It is impossible that you can put him out of your life as you have put me." "It appears you can be unjust to the last," says he, flinging her own accusation back at her. "Have I put you out of my life?" "Ah, was I ever in it?" says she. "But you will write?" "No, not a line. Once for all I break with you. Should my death occur you will hear of it, and I have arranged so, that now and after that event you and the boy will have your positions clearly defined. That is all you can possibly require of me. Even if you marry again, your jointure will be secured to you." "Baltimore!" exclaims she, turning upon him passionately. She seems to struggle with herself for words. "Has marriage proved so sweet a thing," cries she presently, "that I should care to try it again? There, go, I shall sign none of these things." She makes a disdainful gesture towards the loose papers lying on the table, and moves angrily away. "You have your son to consider. Your son will inherit the title and property without these papers. There are complications, however, that perhaps you do not understand. Let them lie there. I shall sign nothing." "In that case you will probably find yourself immersed in troubles of the meaner kinds after my departure. The child cannot inherit until after my death, and I do not care," says she sullenly. "Go if you will. I refuse to benefit by it." what a stubborn woman you are," cries he, in great wrath. "You have for years declined to acknowledge me as your husband. You have by your manner almost commanded my absence from your side. Yet now, when I bring you the joyful news that in a short time you'll actually be rid of me, you throw 1,000 difficulties in my path. Is it that you desire to keep me near you for the purposes of torture? It is too late for that. You have gone a trifle too far. The hope you have so clearly expressed in many ways that time would take me out of your path is at last about to be fulfilled. I have had no such hope." "No? You can look me in the face and say that? Saintly lips never lie. However, do they? Well, I am sick of this life. You are not. I have borne a good deal from you, as I told you before. I bear no more. I give in. Fate has been too strong for me." "You have created your own fate." "You are my fate. You are inexorable. There is no reason why I should stay." Here the sound of running, childish, pattering footsteps can be heard outside the door, and a merry little shout of laughter. The door is suddenly burst open in rather unconventional style, and Bertie rushes into the room, a fox terrier at his heels. The dog is evidently quite as much up to the game as the boy, and both race tempestuously up the room and precipitate themselves against Lady Baltimore's skirts. Round and round her the chase continues, until the boy, bursting away from his mother, dashes toward his father, the terrier after him. There isn't so much scope for talent in a pair of trousers as in a mass of dainty petticoats, and presently Bertie grows tired, flings himself down upon the ground, and lets the dog tumble over him there. The joust is virtually at an end. Lady Baltimore, who has stood immovable during the attack upon her, always with that cold, white, beautiful look upon her face, now points to the stricken child lying panting, laughing, and playing with the dog at his father's feet. "There is a reason," says she, almost inaudibly. Baltimore shakes his head. "I have thought all that out. It is not enough," says he. "Bertie," says his mother, turning to the child, "do you know this, that your father is going to leave you?" "Going?" says the boy vaguely, forgetting the dog for a moment, and glancing upward. "Where?" "Away forever." "Where?" says the boy again. He rises to his feet now, and looks anxiously at his father, then smiles and flings himself into his arms. "Oh, no," says he in a little soft, happy, sure sort of way. "Forever, forever," repeats Isabel in a curious monotone. "Take me up," says the child, tugging at his father's arms. "What does mamma mean? Where are you going?" "To America to shoot bears," returns Baltimore with an embarrassed laugh. How near to tears it is. "Real, live bears?" "Yes." "Take me with you," says the child excitedly. "And leave mamma?" "Or she'll come too," says Bertie confidently. "She'll come where I go." Where he would go, the child. But would she go where the father went? Baltimore's brow darkens. "I am afraid it is out of the question," he says, putting Bertie back again upon the carpet, where the fox terrier is barking furiously and jumping up and down in a frenzied fashion, as if desirous of devouring the child's legs. "The bears might eat you. When you are big and strong—" "You will come back for me?" cries Bertie eagerly. "Perhaps." "He will not," breaks in Lady Baltimore violently. "He will come back no more. When he goes you will never see him again. He has said so. He is going forever." These last two terrible words seem to have sunk into her soul. She cannot cease from repeating them. "Let the boy alone," says Baltimore angrily. The child is looking from one parent to the other. He seems puzzled. expectant, but scarcely unhappy. Childhood can grasp a great deal, but not all. The more unhappy the childhood, the more it can understand of the sudden and larger waves of life. But children delicately brought up and clothed in love from their cradle find it hard to realize that an end to their happiness can ever come. "Tell me, papa," says he at last in a vague, sweet little way. "What is there to tell?" replies the father, with a most meagre laugh, "except that I saw Beecher bringing in some fresh oranges half an hour ago. Perhaps he hasn't eaten them all yet. If you were to go ask for one—" "I'll find him," cries Bertie, brightly, forgetting everything but the present moment. "Come, Trixie, come," to his dog. "You shall have some, too." "You see there won't be much trouble with him," says Baltimore, when the boy has run out of the room in pursuit of oranges. "It will take him a day, perhaps, and after that he will be quite your own. If you won't sign these papers to-day, you will perhaps to-morrow. I had better go and tell Hansard that you would like to have a little time to look them over." He walks quickly down the room, opens the door, and closes it after him. End of chapter 56. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 57 of April's Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. April's Lady by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. Chapter 57. This is that happy morn, that day, long-wished day, of all my life so dark, if cruel stars have not my ruin sworn, and fates my hopes betray, which purely white deserves an everlasting diamond should it mark. He has not, however, gone 3 yards down the corridor when the door is again opened, and Lady Baltimore's voice calls after him. "Baltimore!" Her tone is sharp, high, agonized, the tone of one strung to the highest pitch of despair. It startles him. He turns to look at her. She is standing framed in by the doorway, and one hand is grasping the woodwork with a hold so firm that the knuckles are showing white. With the other hand she beckons him to approach her. He obeys her. He is even so frightened at the strange grey look in her face that he draws her bodily into the room again, shutting the door with a pressure of the hand he can best spare. "What is it?" says he, looking down at her. She has managed to so far overcome the faintness that has been threatening her as to shake him off and stand free, leaning against a chair behind her. "Don't go," says she hoarsely. It is impossible to misunderstand her meaning. It has nothing whatever to do with his interview with the lawyer waiting so patiently down below, but with the final wandering of his into regions unknown. She is as white as death. "How is this, Isabel?" asks he. He is as white as she is now. "Do you know what you are saying? This is a moment of excitement. You do not comprehend what your words mean." "Stay, stay for his sake." "Is that all?" says he, eyes searching hers. "For mine, then." The words seem to scorch her. She covers her face with her hands and stands before him, stricken dumb, miserable, confessed. "For yours!" He goes closer to her, and ventures to take her hand. It is cold, cold as death. His is burning. "You have given a reason for my staying, indeed," says he. "But what is the meaning of it?" This!" cried she, throwing up her head, and showing him her shamed and grief-stricken face. "I am a coward. In spite of everything, I would not have you go so far." "I see, I understand," he sighs heavily. "And yet that story was a foul lie. It is all that stands between us, Isabel. Is it not so? But you will not believe." There is a long silence, during which neither of them stirs. They seem wrapped in thought, in silence, he still holding her hand. "If it was a lie," says she at last, breaking the quiet around them by an effort, "would you so far forgive my distrust of you as to be holding my hand like this?" "Yes. What is there I would not forgive you?" says he. "And it was a lie." "Cyril!" cries she in great agitation. "Take care! It is a last moment. Do you dare to tell me that still? Supposing your story to be true, and mine, that woman's, false, how would it be between us then?" "As it was in the first good old time when we were married." "You could forgive the wrong I have done you all these years, supposing everything, all." "Ah!" This sound seems crushed out of her. She steps backward, and a dry sob breaks from her. "What is it?" asks he quickly. "Oh, that I could, that I dared, believe," says she. "You would have proofs," says he coldly, resigning her hand. "My word is not enough. You might love me did I prove worthy. Your love is not strong enough to endure the pang of distrust. Was ever real love so poor a thing as that? However, you shall have them." "What?" asks she, raising her head. "The proofs you desire," responds he, icily. "That woman, your friend, the immaculate one, died the day before yesterday." "What! You never heard? And you and she?" "She was nothing to me," says Lady Baltimore. "Nothing since the day she reviled me, and yet," with a most joyous laugh, "for the sake of a woman you cared so little about, that even her death has not caused you pang, you severed the tie that should have been the closest to you on earth. Well, she is dead. Heaven rest her soul, as the peasants say. She wrote me a letter on her bed of death." "Yes?" eagerly. "You still doubt?" says he, with a stern glance at her. "So be it. You shall see the letter, though how will you satisfy you? For you can always gratify your desire for suspicion by regarding it as a forgery. The woman herself is dead, so, of course, there is no one to contradict. Do think this all out," says he, with a contemptuous laugh, "before you commit yourself to a fresh belief in me. You see I give you every chance. To such a veritable Thomas in petticoats every road should be laid open. Now," tauntingly, "will you wait here whilst I bring the proof?" He is gazing at her in a heartbroken sort of way. Is it the end? Is it all really over? There had been a faint flicker of the dying candle, a tiny glare, and now for all time is it to be darkness? As for her, ever since he had let her hand go, she had stood with bent head looking at it. He had taken it, he had let it go. There seemed to be a promise of heaven. Was it a false one? She is silent, and Baltimore, who had hoped for one word of trust, of belief, makes a gesture of despair. "I will bring you the letter," he says, moving toward the door. When he does bring it, when she had read it and satisfied herself of the loyalty so long doubted, Where, he asks himself, will they two be then? Further apart than ever? He has forgiven a great deal, much more than this. And yet, strange human nature, he knows if he once leaves the room and her presence now, he will never return again. The letter she will see, but him, never. The door is open. He has almost crossed the threshold. Once again her voice recalls him. Once again he looks back. She is holding out her arms to him. "Cyril, Cyril!" she cried. "I believe you." She staggers toward him. Mercifully the fountain of her tears breaks loose. She flings herself into his willing arms and sobs out a whole world of grief upon his bosom. It is a cruel moment, yet one fraught with joy as keen as sorrow, a fire of anguish out of which both emerge purified, calmed, gladdened. End of chapter 57. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 58 of April's Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. April's Lady by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. Chapter 58. Lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of the birds has come. The vague suspicion of rain that had filled their thoughts at breakfast has proved idle. The sun is shining forth again with redoubled vigor, as if laughing their silly doubts to scorn. Never was there so fair a day. One can almost see the plants growing in the garden, and from every bough the nesting birds are singing loud songs of joy. The meadows are showing a lovely green, and in the glades and uplands the daffodils that come before the swallow dares are uprearing their lovely heads. The air is full of sweet scents and sounds, and Joyce, jumping down from the drawing-room window that lies close to the ground, looks gladly round her. Perhaps it is not so much the beauty of the scene as the warmth of happiness in her own heart that brings a smile to her lips and eyes. He will be here today. Involuntarily she raises one hand and looks at the ring that encircles her engaged finger. A charming ring of pearls and sapphires. It evidently brings her happy thoughts, as, after gazing at it for a moment or two, she stoops and presses her lips eagerly to it. It is his first gift, though not his last, and therefore the most precious. What girl does not like receiving a present from her lover? The least mercenary woman on earth must feel a glow at her heart and a fonder recognition of her sweetheart's worth when he lays a love offering at her feet. Joyce, after her one act of devotion to her sweetheart, runs down the garden path and toward the summer house. She is not expecting Dysart until the day has well grown into its afternoon, but, book in hand, she has escaped from all possible visitors to spend a quiet hour in the old earwiggy shanty at the end of the garden, sure of finding herself safe there from interruptions. The sequel proves the futility of all human belief. Inside the summer house, book in hand likewise, sits Mr. Browne, a picture of studious virtue. Miss Kavanagh, seeing him, stops dead short. So great is her surprise, and Mr. Browne, raising his eyes as if with difficulty from the book on his knee, surveys her with a calmly judicial eye. Not here, not here, my child, quotes he incorrectly. You had better try next door. Try for what? Demands she indignantly. For whom, you mean? No, I don't, with increasing anger. Jocelyn, says Mr. Brown severely, when one forsakes the path of truth, it is only to tread in. Nonsense, says Miss Kavanagh irreverently. As you will, says he meekly, but I assure you he is not here. I could have told you that, says she, colouring, however, very warmly. I must say, Dicky, you are the most ingenious, stupid person I have ever met in my life. To shine in even the smallest line in life is to achieve something, says Mr. Brown complacently. And so you knew he wouldn't be here just now? This is uttered in an insinuating tone. Miss Kavanagh feels she has made a false move. To give Dicky an inch is, indeed, to give him an ell. He? Who? Says she weakly. Don't descend to dissimulation, Jocelyn, advises he severely. It is the surest road to ruin. If one is to believe the good old copybooks, by he, you see I scorn subterfuge, I mean Dysart, the person to whom in a mistaken moment you have affianced yourself, as though I were not ready at any time to espouse you. I am not going to be espoused, says Miss Kavanagh, half laughing. No, I quite understood. I won't have that word, petulantly. It sounds like something out of the Dark Ages. So does he, says Mr. Brown. Felix, you know, so Latin, quite like one of the old monks. I shouldn't wonder if he has turned out a... I wish you wouldn't tease me, Dicky, says she. You think you are amusing, you know, but I think you are one of the rudest people I ever met. I wish you would let me alone. Ah, why didn't you leave me alone? With a slight that would have set a furnace ablaze. However, with a noble determination to overcome his grief, let the past lie. You want to go and meet Dysart, isn't that it? And I'll go and meet him with you. Could self-sacrifice further go? Jim along Josie, no doubt. He is at the upper gate by this time, flying on the wings of love. He is not, says Joyce, and I wish once for all, Dicky, that you wouldn't call me Josie. Jocelyn is bad enough, but Josie, and I'm not going to Jim anywhere, and certainly, with strong determination, not with you. She looks at him with sudden curiosity. What brought you here today? Asks she, most inhospitably, it must be confessed. What brings me here every day? To see the unkindest girl in the world. She doesn't live here, says Miss Kavanagh. Dicky, changing her tone suddenly and looking at him with earnest eyes, what is this I hear about Lady Multimore and her husband? Be sensible now, do and tell me. They're going abroad together, with Bertie. They've made it up, says he, growing as sensible as ever she can desire. It is such a complete make-up all around, they didn't even ask me to go with them. However, I'm determined to join them at Nice on their return from Egypt. Too much billing and cooing is bad for people. I'm so glad, says Joyce, her eyes filling with tears. They are two such dear people, and if it hadn't been for Lady... By the by, where is Lady Swansdown? Russia, I think. Well, I liked her too, says Joyce with a sigh. But she wasn't good for Baltimore, was she? Not very, says Mr. Brown dryly. I should say, on the whole, that she disagreed with him. Tonics are sometimes dangerous." "I'm so delighted," says Joyce, still thinking of Lady Baltimore. "Well," smiling at him, "why don't you go in and see Barbara?" "I have seen her, talked with her a long while, and bid her adieu. I was on my way back to court, having failed my hope of seeing you, when I found this delightful nest of earwigs, and I thought I'd stay and confabulate with them a while in default of better companions." "Poor Dicky," says she. "Come with me, then, and I'll talk to you for half an hour." "Too late," says he, looking at his watch. "There is only one thing left me now to say to you, and that is goodbye." "Why this mad haste?" "Aha! Can I have my little secrets, too?" says he. "I whisper in your ear," leaning towards her. "No, thank you," says she, waving him off with determination. "I remember your last whisper. There, if you can't say, Dicky, good bye indeed. I am going for a walk." She turns away resolutely, leaving Mr. Browne to sink back upon the seat and continue reading, or else go and meet the secret he spoke of. "I say," calls he, running after her, "you may as well see me as far as the gate anyway." It is evident the book at least has lost its charms. Miss Kavanagh, not being stony-hearted so far, gives in as to walk with him to a side gate, and having finally bidden him adieu, goes back to the summer house he has quitted, and opening her book, prepares to enjoy herself. Vain preparation! It is plain that the fates are against her today. She is no sooner seated, with her book of poetry open on her knee, than a little flying form turns the corner and Tommy precipitates himself upon her. "What are you doing?" asks he. End of chapter 58. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 59 of April's Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. April's Lady by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. Chapter 59. Lips are so like flowers, I might snatch at those, redder than the rose leaves, sweeter than the rose. Love is a great master. "I am reading," says she. "Can't you see that?" "Read to me, then," says Tommy, scrambling up on the bench beside her and snuggling himself under her arm. "I love to hear people." "Well, not this, at all events," says Miss Kavanagh, placing the dainty copy of the Muses of Mayfair she has been reading on the rustic table in front of her. "Why not that one? What is it?" asks Tommy, staring at the book. "Nothing you would like. Horrid stuff. Only poetry." "What's poetry?" "Oh, nonsense, Tommy. You know very well what poetry is. Your hymns are poetry." This she considers will put an end to all desire for the book in question. It is a clever and skilful move, but it fails signally. There is silence for a moment while Tommy cogitates, and then, "Are those hymns?" demands he, pointing at the discarded volume. "No, not exactly." This is scarcely disingenuous, and Miss Kavanagh has the grace to blush a little. She is the further discomposed in that she becomes aware presently that Tommy sees through her perfectly. "Well, what are they?" asks he. "Oh, well, just poetry, you know." "I don't," says Tommy, flatly, who is nothing if not painfully truthful. "Let me hear them." He pauses here and regards her with searching eye. They, with careful forethought, aren't lessons, are they? No, they are not lessons, says his aunt, laughing, but you wouldn't like them for all that. If you are athirst for literature, get me one of your own books, and I will read Jack the Giant Killer to you. I am sick of them, says Tommy, most ungratefully, that tremendous hero having filled up many an idle hour of his during his short lifetime. No, nestling close to her, go on with your poetry one. You would hate it. It's worse than Jack, says she. Let me hear it, says Tommy persistently. Well, says Miss Kavanagh with a sigh, if you will have it, at least don't interrupt. She has tried very hard to get rid of him, but having failed in so signal a fashion, she gives herself up with an admirable resignation to the inevitable. What would I do that for? asked Tommy rather indignantly. I don't know, I'm sure, but I thought I'd warn you, says she, wisely precautious. Now sit down there, pointing to the seat beside her, and when you feel you've had enough of it, say so at once. That would be interrupting, says Tommy, the conscientious. Well, I give you leave to interrupt so far, says Joyce, glad to leave him a loophole that may ensure his departure before Felix comes. But no further, mind that. Oh, I'm minding, says Tommy impatiently. Go on. Why don't you begin? Miss Kavanagh, taking up her book once more, opens it at random. All its contents are sweetmeats of the prettiest, so she is not driven to a choice. She commences to read in a firm, soft voice. The wind and the beam love the rose, and the roses love one, for who reeks the... What's that? Says Tommy. What's what? You aren't reading it right, are you? I certainly am. Why? I don't believe a beam of wood could love anything, says Tommy. It's too heavy. It doesn't mean a beam of wood, doesn't it? Staring up in her face. What it means then, the beam that is in thine own eye? He is now examining her own eye with great interest. As usual, Tommy is strong in Bible lore. I have no beams in my eye, I hope, says Joyce, laughing, and at all events it doesn't mean that either. The poet who wrote this means a sunbeam. Well, why couldn't he say so? Says Tommy gruffly. I really think you had better bring me one of your own books, said Joyce. I told you this would... No, obstinately. I like this. It sounds so nice and smoothly. Go on, says Tommy, giving her a nudge. Joyce, with a sigh, reopens the volume and gives herself up for lost. To argue with Tommy has always been known to fatigue, and nothing else. One never gains anything by it. Well, do be quiet now and listen, says she, protesting faintly. I'm listening like anything, says Tommy, and indeed now, at last, it seems if he were. So silent does he grow as his aunt reads on, you might have heard a mouse squeak. But for the low, soft tones of Joyce, no smallest sound break the sweet silence of the day. Miss Kavanagh is beginning to feel distinctly flattered. If one can captivate the flitting fancies of a child by one's eloquent rendering of a charming verse, what may one not aspire to? There must be something in her style if it can reduce a boy of 7 to such a state of ecstatic attention, considering the subject is hardly such one as would suit his tender years. But Tommy was always thoughtful beyond his age. A clear, clever little fellow, so appreciative, far, far beyond the average. He The mild sweetness of the spring evening and her own thoughts are broken in upon this instant by the dear clever little fellow. "He has just got your waist now," says he, with an air of wild if subdued excitement. "He! Who? What?" shrieks Joyce, springing to her feet. A long acquaintance with Tommy has taught her to dread the worst. "Oh, there! Of course you've knocked him down, and I did want to see how high he would go. I was tickling his tail to make him hurry up," says Tommy, in an aggrieved tone. "I can't see him anywhere now," peering about on the ground at her feet. "Oh, what is it, Tommy? Do speak," cries Joyce, in a frenzy of fear and disgust. "'Twas an earwig," says Tommy, lifting a seraphic face to hers. "And such a big one. He was racing up your dress most beautifully, and now you've upset him. Poor thing! I don't believe he'll ever find his way back to you again." "I shall hope not, indeed," says Miss Kavanagh hastily. "He began at the very end of your frock," goes on Tommy, still searching diligently on the ground, as if to find the earwig with a view to restoring it to its lost hunting ground. "And it wriggled up so nicely. I don't know where he is now," sorrowfully, "unless," with a sudden brightening of his expressive face, "he is up your petticoats." "Tommy! What a horrid bad boy you are!" cries poor Joyce, wildly. She gives a frantic shake to the petticoats in question. "Find him at once, sir. He must be somewhere down there. I shan't have an instant's peace until I know where he is." "I cannot see him anywhere," says Tommy. "Maybe you'll feel him presently, and then we'll know. He isn't on your leg now, is he?" "Oh, don't!" cries Joyce, who looks as if she is going to cry. She gives herself another vigorous shake, and stands away from the spot where Tommy evidently thinks the noxious beast in question may be, with her petticoats held carefully up in both hands. "Oh, Tommy, darling, do find him. He can't be up my petticoats, can he?" "He can. There's nothing they can't do," says Tommy, who is plainly reveling in the storm he has raised. Her open fright is beer and skittles to him. "Why did you stir? He was as good as gold until then, and there wasn't anything to be afraid of. I was watching him. When he got to your ear I'd have told you. I wouldn't like him to make you deaf, but I wanted to see if he would go to your ear. But you spoiled my fun. And now, where is he?" asks Tommy with an awful suggestion in his tone. "On the grass, perhaps," says Joyce, miserably, looking round her everywhere, even on her shoulder. "I don't feel him anywhere." "Sometimes they stay quite a long time, and then they crawl," says Tommy, the most horrible anticipation in his tone. "Really, Tommy," cries his aunt, indignantly, "I do think you are the most abominable boy I ever met in my life. There, go away. I certainly shan't read another line to you, either now or ever." "What is the matter?" asks a voice at this moment that sounds close to her elbow. She turns round with a start. "It is you, Felix," says she, coloring warmly. "Oh, oh, it's nothing, only Tommy, and he said I had an earwig on me, and I was just a little unnerved, you know." "And no wonder," says her lover, with delightful sympathy. "I can't bear that sort of wild animal myself. Tommy, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. When you saw him, why didn't you rise up and slay the destroyer of your aunt's peace? There, run away into the hall. You will find on one of the tables a box of chocolate. I told Mabel it was there. Perhaps she—" Like an arrow from the bow, Tommy departs. He has evidently his doubts of Mabel, says Joyce, laughing rather nervously. She is still a little shy with Phoenix. He doesn't trust her. No. He has seated himself and now draws her down beside him. You are reading, he says. Yes. To Tommy? Yes, laughing more naturally this time. Tommy is a more learned person than one would have supposed. Is this the sort of thing he likes? Pointing to Nydia's exquisite song. I'm afraid not, though he would insist upon me reading it. The earwig was evidently far more engrossing as a subject than either the wind or the rose. And yet, he has his arm around her now, and is reading the poem over her shoulder. You are my rose, says he softly, and you, do you love but one? She makes a little mute gesture that might signify anything or nothing to the uninitiated, but to him his instinct with a most happy meaning. Am I the one, darling? She makes the same little silent movement again, but this time she adds to it by casting a swift glance upward at him from under her lowered lids. Make me sure of it, entreated he almost in a whisper. He leans over her, lower, lower still, with a little tremulous laugh, dangerously akin to tears. She raises her soft palm to his cheek and tries to press him from her, but he holds her fast. Make me sure, he says again. There is a last faint hesitation on her part, and then their lips meet. I have doubted always, always a little, ever since that night down by the river, says he. But now, oh no, you must not doubt me again, says she with tears in her eyes. End of chapter 59. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. End of April's Lady, a novel by Mrs. Hungerford.